there is very little similarity to the job of marketing in 2006 to what the job of marketing was in 2024. And I started realizing that all of these things have changed. And the thing that I'd never taken into account was that I'd changed too.
I'm Mark Cook, president of Windfall Partners. We get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. After turnarounds as chief executive, the largest ever studies of award-winning leaders, a New York Times bestseller, and 5-star keynotes, I've coached 4,000 client wins at top brands. My Bold Encounters is an advanced system for leading. First, powerful steps on a path forward. Second, problem-solving skills that beat obstacles fast. Now, lead with Bold Encounters today.
Welcome to Bold Encounters. Today, I have the marketing whisperer, Erik Wolf. Erik Wolf is a speaker at Vistas Worldwide and other CEO gatherings like that. And he has workshops and live events where he takes you right through the way to do marketing profitably. It's not just about reaching maybe the dozen or 100 followers that the algorithm lets you get to. It's about taking it all the way. And so I'm excited to have you, Erik. How are you?
I'm good, and that was a lovely introduction. Thank you.
You bet. It's how I see it. I love it. I mean, there is so much fluff and wasted money that goes to social media marketing and live marketing and sales type marketing. I'm really interested in this conversation. I can't wait to hear what you say, actually, for selfish reasons, but I'm glad the audience gets to hear too.
Absolutely. We can whisper here as well. It's all good.
I want to ask you a first question because of who a big portion of my audience is. Of course, I go out and I create 5-year plans for CEOs that helps this quarter better, but I have a lot of young listeners that are in college and just out of college and just in the workplace. They're emerging CEOs or emerging contributors to society in a more philanthropic or other way. And before we get to your exciting story that wasn't very exciting for you, but difficult, and then the exciting success after, I'd like you to go before that, in the moments where you're beginning your career. And I want you to speak right to that mall worker, that college graduate, that first-time job employee that's just thinking through their career. Tell them what you learned and what happened.
So I've actually got a hell of a story about that. So I was in college, no idea of what the hell I wanted to do with myself. Like legitimately, I was a political science major. Turns out political scientist isn't really like a job. So what am I going to do? I didn't go to and bless my heart, I didn't go to college with that intentionality of this is the road from point A to point B. I was like, I'm going to college. I'm going to take the classes that I enjoy and that stimulate me intellectually, and I'm going to do activities. It's going to be great. But you get to be like a senior and you have no idea what the hell comes next. And it turns out that ultimately you have to make money and pay rent and all kinds of stuff like that. So I was among like the first group of students at my college that had started a video production club, and I produced the college's first TV show, and I said, okay, you know what, this video thing is cool. I'm gonna go into television, and I heard through, and I had a lot of friends that I lived in Atlanta, and so I had a lot of friends that worked at places like CNN and Turner, and folks said, you know, hey, I just heard about this assistant producer role with this up and coming TV show. You should talk to this guy. And so I talked to this guy. He interviews me. He calls me 2 weeks later. He says, you're hired.
Wow.
And I was like, well, that was easy. This is amazing. I'm a college senior. I'm in my last semester, and I'm going to produce a TV show, and this is going to be amazing. and so I went and I started I signed the lease for an apartment. I started looking at studio space. I had a friend who was going to be was an aspiring actress and who I'd worked with at the college stuff, and he hired her to be the host, and we were like, yes, we're making a TV show together. This is amazing. Turns out that it wasn't that the guy really wasn't well, and he had sort of imagined this business,
Oh
and
my
so
gosh.
and it turns out that I've got a 1 year lease. I've got no job. Um, and it was where it was like, hey, I've been doing this for a few weeks. Don't you get paid at some point? And I kept asking him like, hey, well, where's my paycheck? And he was like, oh yeah, it's coming, it's coming. It was never coming. There
Oh
was no
dear.
show. There was no sponsors. It was like this weird scam, and I have no idea. So anyway, so now I'm a recent college graduate with an apartment and with expenses and with no income. And what I ended up doing was, it turns out that I was self-trained as a graphic designer. It was just a hobby. And so I
Hmm.
said, okay, I'll get a job in graphics. I ended up taking a job, $12 an hour, doing newspaper layouts at the Marietta Daily Journal, and and then I got a couple of other jobs, and I bounced around, and finally I was making like $25 an hour as a in production for an internet security company.
Mm.
And this was late 90s. Internet security, the internet was new. Internet security as a concept was very, very new. it
Very.
was it was revolutionary at the time, and this was one of the first companies that was really doing that high level of consulting, and they were publishing this suite of books. I became in charge of the books,
Hmm.
and while I was there, my cubicle was right next to where all the marketing people were. And that's where I realized that it's not about the yes. So doing layouts for books is cool. Handling, producing them, and getting them made, that's fun. But what the marketing people were talking about, that was the interesting stuff. And I was like, I need to get myself over there. And that was really how I kind of discovered what I wanted to be. And it wasn't until right after I left there that I finally got like a real marketing job, and ultimately I climbed the corporate ladder until I decided to stop doing that and abandon ship and do it on my own. But truly, I came into it without a clue of what I wanted to do, and I ended up just like on like sort of like the third accident discovering this thing that was ultimately my career and the thing that I was actually good at.
Was the gentleman older than you that told you were going into TV and production and all
Yeah,
that?
yeah, he was. It wasn't like this was a guy. He was super well spoken. He was. I would put him as maybe. So I was 21 at the time, and I want to say that he was about 39.
Wow.
I would have put him late 30s, maybe early 40s. So this
So
is he
sharp,
was. Yeah,
young,
he
but
he
older
passed
than you. Yeah.
he passed all the checks. I didn't
Oh
have
man.
he didn't set off any, and of course, 21, naive. But I had this friend in it with me too, who I ended up bringing in, and of course, she didn't smell anything funny either.
Hmm.
And I would take this guy, and he would, and I was looking for studio space, and there were a couple of times I even put him in front of people that were running studios, and none of them seemed to suspect anything. It was, and I really don't know what the I would love to know what the story behind the story was, and
Yeah.
what was really going on, like in his head, or what he thought he was doing. But truly, this was like it was a fiction,
Yeah.
and I was just like living in this alternate universe this guy had created, and I didn't know it. I was young. I was naive.
Sounds like he didn't ask you for money, which would have tipped you off that something was wrong.
No,
So
yeah, no
he
money.
just was trying to do something, and it was all in his head, and it was all dream,
fortunately,
no vision, no plan.
Unfortunately, no casting couch situation either. I gave nothing to this except for my labor, and it was just completely made up, and literally it took me like a month, and not getting paid, and when are we going to get paid, and that's when I found out that, hey, he hasn't been honest about it, and he told me, it's like, well, we don't have any sponsors, and I was like, but you told me that we had sponsors. And I'd never met them. So yeah, it was a situation.
Right out of college,
yeah. Legitimately, this was my first exposure to real life, as a this was all in the back quarter of my senior year. And so this would have been like March that I got hooked up with this guy, graduated in early May, and I probably started working with him, late April. And so this kind of carried on after graduation, and it took me weeks to figure out that this wasn't the thing. And it was absolutely devastating. Yeah. When I tell you that I'd be and this was I was living in Atlanta, and it's May, and I'm just like sitting, and I remember I was on my little like patio or right inside looking out the patio door, and I'm like, I can't believe that I fell for this. I can't believe that I'm now stuck with this apartment. I don't have any idea of what I'm going to do. Things couldn't possibly get worse. And then the skies opened up, and like hail was pounding my car. And I was just like, okay, now we're there. That's the rock bottom. And yeah, I had no idea. And it took me, I probably had PTSD for like a week. Like, what am I going to do? And then I finally said, okay, we're going to, I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to start interviewing for jobs. And I started finding graphic design positions, and I said, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I can do this for now and at least like cover my rent.
Well, two things that I hear is think of all those lessons you learned. Holy cow. As a young person that you're passing on, as I asked you to this audience, the lessons are pretty well spelled out in this story. The second thing is, what a healthy response. I mean, there's better things in life than going and finding a job for sure, but what a healthy response to go find a job when you're just feeling fooled and discouraged, instead of turning to, something now and me and hedonism or some drugs, whatever. So way to go. So you jump in a job, and at the risk of getting into this episode talking about endless meetings of company meetings, management meetings, DEI and sexual harassment and security for internet and all that, just tell me how long you were with a company before we move on. How long did you stay with a company after you got a job?
And I'm going to say that I feel like it's different now. I was not. So in that first 6 months I realized that my job was made up, and that I wasn't going to be earning a living, and so from June until December of that year, there was a lot of bouncing around, but most of that was due to honestly just trying to figure out how to earn a living, because I knew that $12 an hour wasn't going to cut it. And so when you're in that situation and then somebody offers you like $13.50, it's like, okay, I have to take this. Yeah, I have to, and the commute is better, so I got to take this job. Yeah. And then somebody says, okay, but come back here and we'll give you 15. Cool, I'm in. And then finally I got a job that was going to pay me $25 an hour, which at that point was like being rich. But Yeah, I was very proud of myself at that point. But that company I stayed with for 2, 3 years, 2.5, something like that. And what had happened there, I probably would have stayed there longer. I did see a career path. I did see some opportunities. Um, the what happened though was is that I ended up getting laid off.
Mm.
Um, they
Ouch.
they were having some trouble, and so I ended up getting laid off from that job. The next job that I got was with a consumer goods company, baby toy manufacturer, and I ended up staying there for 5 years.
Mm.
And when I left there, it was to start my own business. So
Excellent.
and then I did that for 18 years straight. But
Tell me the genesis of that. Like you're at this job and you're going through that transition, and how are you deciding what it is and how to do it, and how did you figure
I,
out your plan and all that?
I had said, by the way, for years, for and people be like, well, are you gonna what are you gonna do? Are you gonna start your own agency? Are you gonna go into business for yourself? And I'd be like, hell no. Not just no, but F no. That does not seem fun. That seems like a lot of stress. That seems like a lot of pressure. I don't know that I'm cut out for that. I don't even really know that I like talking to people that much. Like how in the world would I possibly do that?
Yeah.
And I'd also come from a background where my father was this chronic entrepreneur type of person
Mm.
and chronic entrepreneurial failure type of person. And
Mm.
so and so I think I also probably believed that the failure was in my blood somehow. So always no 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 no. Um, so I'm working at this company, and they really solid company. They grew from about during the 5 years that I was there was a really big period for them. They grew from about 75 million to I want to say like 110, 115 million while I was there, somewhere in that ballpark.
Wow.
And it was a it was a cool place to be. We sold to Walmart, Target, Toys R Us, Babies R Us, all of those types, and those stores, Toys R Us, Babies R Us, still existed at that time. And so it was a good place for me to be. It was it was awesome. I learned a ton. I got my first real management gig there, and I got to launch a global brand. Really liked it. It got to a point though after 5 years where I sort of realized that okay, I've come to the end of what I'm going to do here, and it's going to be time for me to move on. There really isn't a path for me to continue to grow here. So I made the decision that I was going to move on, and I said, okay, well, what do I want to do? And in Atlanta, and for people like me, there were lots of jobs to be had. Um, it was actually a great time if I had wanted to work at a big agency. I kind of didn't want that. There were always jobs to be had for folks with my expertise at places like Turner and Coca-Cola. And I didn't want that because I think the thing that I liked least about my job was that even in a smaller privately held business, I felt like I still wasn't in the position where I could have the level of impact with the CEO that I wanted to. Where it was like I don't know that, and I'm 2 levels removed from the CEO, but that was still too much. And so I said, I don't think that my journey is to go and be a a little fish in a big pond. I think what I'm learning is that I need to be a big fish in a little pond in order to be happy, where I feel like I'm actually creating change.
Yeah.
So I started looking for jobs as like a VP of marketing for smaller companies, like $6 to $20 million companies. And what started happening with those, I would go on the interviews and they would go great. And yes, sometimes they would take someone else, but a lot of times what was happening is that it was like, well, no, we've realized through this process, what this process has taught us is that we're not ready to have this role in house. And I'd had an interview with with an IT MSP, managed service provider. Uh, again, that kind of size company, and we had a couple of interviews. I went and saw the place. I had a good rapport with the CEO, and I started getting. I felt like this is a job that I should get. This one's going to happen. And then 3 weeks pass, 4 weeks pass, 5 weeks pass. I'm not hearing from him. And so I called him up one day, and I was like, "Hey, I'm getting the impression that you're not going to hire me to lead this new in-house marketing department. What if I was your agency instead?" And he said, "Well, I would love that." And so I went to my wife at the time, and I said, "How's your insurance?" And we talked about it, and I said, I think that this might be what I have to do. And she was cool with that. And so I gave a month's notice at my job. And I said, and basically what that was just, I knew that if they fired me at that point, they'd have to pay me. And I had the ability to sort of be a short timer. Like I would go and like, I went and I bought a MacBook, and our office was like kind of just outside of North Point Mall in Alpharetta, Georgia. And so I would go to lunch, and I would drive to the mall, which was, literally just on the other side of the parking lot. And I'd sit outside the Apple store for 2 hours, stealing their Wi-Fi and working on my new business.
That's so funny.
And yeah, so that's that. So that's how it happened. It wasn't. It was just like another thing that sort of just like happened. It wasn't part of my plan. It wasn't an aspiration to be an entrepreneur or to start an agency. It was just something that kind of, it just was. And
Well,
I
it was
went
effort. I mean, your effort to try to get the job, and then to creative problem solve when you were, reading the tea leaves,
and that's
is something. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's been where probably, I think that probably it's been maybe my best asset and my biggest weakness over the years is that I do just sort of look at problems, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to solve this?
Yeah.
And sometimes my solutions come across as being impulsive or not quite thinking the whole thing through, which I think is true to a degree. But yeah, it kept me. It allowed me to. It's the same thing that saved me when I found out that I didn't really have a job after a month of thinking that I had a job and that I was going to be taken care of. It saved me from that, because I was like, okay, we're going to pivot and we're going to do this now, and we're going to do whatever we have to make this work. And then it was the same thing. I sat down after months of being frustrated of not being able to get the kind of job that I wanted, and I was like, all right, it's not going to happen this way. What can I do? And that appeared to be a thing that I could do.
Yeah. Not everyone thinks that way, for sure. Okay, before we get on to your advice for marketing and making it profitable, I want to just ask you about one more part in your work life that's really big. Tell us about the next big step that you invested a lot of time in your life into your next big step, right? And tell us about that part.
So I started off and I said, okay, I'm going to make this an agency. I'm going to make it work. And I ended up doing it for 18 years. And it went, it was a long time. And it went through, in that time, I would say, a lot of iterations. Because so when I started it was 2006, and I started at a point where, where Facebook wasn't here, where we had MySpace. I started in MySpace internet. That's how long it was, and we a lot of companies at that point, believe it or not, even though we were 10, 11 years into where the web was readily available in a lot of places, a lot of small companies and even mid-sized companies really didn't have websites at that time. There was actually a lot of conversations that I had to have in 2006 about hey, this is why you actually need a website. And I was also the person who then had to, 3 years later, tell them, no, this is why you have to participate in this social media stuff. You can't just opt out of it. And I know you don't like it, and I know that it doesn't feel like the way you do business.
Yeah.
But opting out is the wrong choice, and this is why. And I've been through, so I've seen in those 18 years, it was a hell of an 18 years to be running a marketing agency, because we went through all kinds of cycles of new stuff and stuff going away, and then maturity, and what are we actually going to do with this stuff. So the things that the company that I started in 2006 and the company that I was running in 2024 were very different companies.
Yeah.
Extraordinarily different companies. And I'd had a lot of really cool things happen during that time. I worked with a lot of great clients. I'd had a lot of success. We were actually in Colorado Biz Magazine. We were best marketing advertising agency like 5 years in a row. There was a lot of, I got to speak at South by Southwest twice. I was
Nice.
it was there was a lot of stuff that was fun about it, and there was a lot of stuff that was really rewarding about it, and a lot of things that made me say to myself, like, hey, this was the right thing. You can do this. You're gonna make it happen. And first time we crossed $1 million in revenue, that was a big deal. There was a really good run, and there were a lot of things that I really liked about it, and a lot of ways that I grew because of it. But the thing, of course, that I realized ultimately is that the company has changed a lot in 18 years. And the industry has changed a lot in 18 years. And the thing that I
And
didn't
the phenomenon,
really...
like just the
Oh,
active marketing, within those channels and the channels themselves.
oh,
Yeah, tremendous.
absolutely. I mean, we
Mm.
saw, I mean, in a lot of ways, what I experienced in that time was the entire idea of marketing completely collapsing and then being rebuilt,
Yeah.
because people's perception of what you needed to do changed,
Mm.
and a lot of people stopped thinking, well, no, we don't need to be thinking about integrated marketing communications. We're just going to get an SEO agency, and we're gonna be number one on Google, and now social media is here, and so I don't need to worry about any of that stuff. We're gonna hire a social media person, and the phone's gonna ring off the hook. And a
Right.
lot of that didn't happen, and now people have finally gotten back into the mode of understanding that no, we actually, all of these things that came along weren't a replacement for traditional marketing. All of the traditional marketing ideas actually are still there. We just haven't been embracing them, and now we've got to figure out how the old meets the new. So the whole thing, it's what we've gone through as a society in the last, and that's even before we think about how COVID impacted things, which was an absolutely enormous shift for a lot of things, and in my industry as well. So yes, there is very little similarity to the job of marketing in 2006 to what the job of marketing was in 2024. And I started realizing that all of these things have changed. And the thing that I'd never taken into account was that I'd changed too. And my relationship, it turned out that my relationship to the work was not what it used to be either. And and I I was not, and I realized that I was trying to take this agency and make it fit into the work that I really wanted to do, which was actually different than agency work. When and I talk about this all the time because this is a big lesson that I try to teach people. It's that when you go and you deliver a service to somebody, where you think the value is and where your customer thinks the value is are very often very different.
Yes.
And I can tell you very honestly that the shoemaker's children were barefoot that day,
Yeah.
because for me, the thing that I loved and that I really came to appreciate was the science behind things, really how you make it work. Stuff would We come into companies and they're having trouble with marketing. Why is that? What are the things that are not necessarily inside of the agency or inside of the service, but inside of you, the person that's hiring me, or the company of the person that's hiring me, that is causing this malfunction? And and those are the things that I was really interested in building a practice around.
Mm.
And it turns out that I can go at the beginning of the engagement or in the sales process, and I can sit down with a business owner, and I can talk strategy, and I can tell them, hey, this is where I think you're missing. This is what I want to do with you. This is how I want to fix this. And then they sign the contract. And when you hire an agency, no matter what that first meeting is like, when you hire an agency, at the end of the day, the thing that you really value and the thing that you really feel like you're buying, it's the new website, and it's the graphics, and it's the emails, and it's the copywriting, and it's all of that stuff. And my passion for the stuff, I found, was very far diminished. And I said, I'm different now, and I keep trying to put this square peg into a round hole.
Hmm.
And you have this moment where it's like, it's not going to work, is it? And I decided that it wasn't going to work, and that if I was going to do the work that I wanted to do, and if I was going to be valued for the things that I wanted to be valued for, I realized that those goals were incompatible with running an agency.
So
So I said, I'm not going to do it anymore.
Yeah. So you just shut it down?
Not all at once. We had a couple of clients that had left, and I had said, okay, I'm not going to look to replace these. And I said, I'm not going to take on any new clients. There were a couple of clients that then I negotiated an out with. And then there were a few others that I simply said, okay, and I went to them and said, here's the deal. We're not gonna renew your contract when this one expires. And so, I'm happy to help any way I can with that transition. But when the contract ends, we're not going to renew it, and it has nothing to do with you. You know, my goal is to step away from this business, and so that's what, and legitimately got down to the last two contracts, and they both expired on December 31st. And so I had like a little bit of a time of transition between when I started telling people and the end of the year when the company stopped earning money. But yeah, it wasn't like, okay, doors closed, we're shutting off the lights. That wouldn't have been right either. But yeah, it spent about 5 months winding it down.
It's hard. It's interesting stuff when you get to that point that you're describing. You think, I just really don't have this in my soul anymore to provide for people this way, to make a living for myself and my family. I just don't have it. It's an interesting moment. And it's also interesting, like you started out, like when someone else decides that for you earlier in your career. It's a very interesting moment in life for sure.
But and truly, it was, for me, and like I said, there were a lot of different versions of it, and there were things that came and went from it over all of that time. But for me, what I realized was that I was still there because I felt like I had to be, and I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't having a good time. I wasn't being stimulated in the right ways. There were definitely times where, because of that I can look back on and say, I wasn't the best boss. I wasn't the best vendor. I wasn't the best person to be around at home. And there comes a point in all of our lives where we sort of have the right to choose ourselves. And when I came, last summer, I was feeling pretty defeated, pretty miserable. And I said, it's why do I keep doing this? Yeah. What's really in it for me at this point? And of all the things that I thought were potentially in it for me, self-fulfillment wasn't one of them. And I had all of these ideas about, well, hey, when I'm done with this business, and I guess there was a thought at that point that there was going to be a very profitable exit, in the next 8 years or so. And I said, well, look, I'm putting all of this other stuff that's important to me on hold so that I can run this business that I don't like, and that's no longer giving me satisfaction as a professional or as a person. I'm not being fulfilled. And I've got to do it for another 8 years in order to then get to do what I want to do. I was like, that doesn't sound good. That doesn't sound like a path that's terribly kind to me.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I empathize exactly, but I sympathize with what you're saying a bit. I think those of us, and I'm one, I'm not good at what you do, but I know it and have managed it. And I know that people that love beautiful things, which is a lot of people, we love beautiful writing, we love beautiful colors, we love beautiful image selection, we love beautiful layout, and we love beautiful things in presenting a communication of anything. And sometimes it's very artistic, sometimes it's very commercial, but beauty's still wonderful, and there's different styles of it. And I think it's admirable that for 18 years you kept the meaning and the beauty alive in it. But at some point that I have experienced too, there's a cycle or an endpoint where the speed and the crushing deadlines and the time, the all-day working, it never stops, and the speed and the constancy of focusing on those things makes them a little trivial, and it's a little disappointing to your soul. You just feel like
It
It's
is.
not beauty anymore. It's not wonderful writing. It's just getting it done, and it's just we're turning beauty into
And yeah,
tasks,
and it's problems and it's people and it's all of these
arguments, and
and
yeah,
yeah, it's all of this stuff and and not to say that that there was no way that I couldn't have made it work or but it just wasn't in me to continue to fight those battles
yeah,
and I said, you know, I just want to do something for myself, and I've been doing this. I've been, I mean, at this point, I've been working in this industry for like 25 years, and
amazing.
so
Yeah,
to be at that stage of your career and to be an executive and to have all of this success,
yeah,
but have it not feel like it's giving you terribly much. That was just a really hard place for me to be, and one day I was just like, I don't think I can do it anymore.
you had to do it something differently. Well, I know that you have, based on all these lessons and experiences, I know that you have a short few really tangible, practical career pieces of advice. And I also know that we're going to get to these pieces of advice to get your marketing profitable. But before we do those two things, I'd really like to ask you a personal favor. I'd like to hear your vision of the future. Like, what if not that, where are you
Yes.
heading?
So and so as I did, and so of course, as you've probably seen, the theme is that when I made the decision that the agency was going to end, I immediately did the pragmatic thing, and I said, okay, well, what am I going to do right now, and how am I going to put myself in a position where I can earn money and figure things out. And so pivot number one is that I started doing coaching and consulting, and the type of work that I've been doing in over the last 7 months or so has been where it's my belief that a lot of companies fail at marketing because it's broken from the inside. You can I love this Saturday Night Live bit that Adam Sandler did. It was where he was the Italian doing the infomercial selling the vacations to Italy, and he says, and he's like, look, I can take you to Italy and I can show you all of the sights and the food and the culture, but I need you to understand that if you're sad and then you go to a new place, it's still going to be the same sad you, just someplace different. Does that make sense? And it's this great bit. And the thing for me, because I've had this ringside seat to all of the things that go well and badly for all of this time, I the thing that I realize is that, you know, companies go and they hire and fire internal marketing managers, they hire and fire agencies, they hire and fire other groups. And a lot of times in marketing, especially, it ends up being where it's, look, it's just the same sad you. You've just got different people now.
Yeah.
And I said, I think it's time to address the fact that we've got people in these companies with unhealthy relationships with marketing, and how can I fix them, and how can I fix it so that they can stop making the same mistake over and over again. And so rather than doing agency work and being somebody that's in charge of the stuff, I've started going into companies and I've been the person that is working with that executive and teaching them how to be a marketing leader, versus, you know, it's the CEO of the company and They don't know how to do marketing. They're unfamiliar with, they just want to spend the money and have it work. And that doesn't work. So I'm coaching the executives. A lot of times these companies will have an internal marketing manager that is a department of one, department of two type of situation. Nobody's really in charge. And so these folks, they have nobody that's telling them what their job actually is. They have nobody that's mentoring them, nobody that's actually making them better at their jobs. And so I coach the executive and I mentor the marketing manager, and we actually build the strategy, we build the cadence, we build the budget, and we take all of these things that the company's never had before and start putting it together so that you can hire an agency and expect that you're going to get what you need. And so that you can invest in a new website and feel like you're going to get what you need. And you can set up the budget and believe that you're going to get the outcome from that you were going to get. And so that was where I started. And that's been a lot of fun and terribly rewarding.
Let me see if I can understand it in my own experience, in my words. So there's a time when you're going in, and whether it's an internal agency or an external agency, I've been in both of those spaces in my career. And when you're going into clients, there are a lot of clients that just want to hear how to do it. But there are a lot of clients that just have opinions that they have never articulated. They don't even know they're in there buried. And they just want to tell you what to do at every step without really having a coherent reason or plan or purpose that affects the prospect.
Agencies in a lot of cases get used like the agency is my mouse.
Yeah, they're like the production artist. Everyone, all these professionals that know how to do strategy and these amazingly effective things, they just get turned into these production artists doing what the client wants all the time.
And I'm gonna even from the standpoint of for example, and I talk a lot about SEO as being, search engine optimization, as being sort of the poster child of a lot of this magical thinking and stuff like that. But it happens so often that the CEO of the company will go to their marketing manager and say, we need to do SEO. I got this business card at this whatever,
or vice versa. The manager goes to the CEO and says, we got to do it. Yeah.
Well, and a lot of times if the CEO doesn't want it, it doesn't get done. And a lot of times when the marketing manager comes, and here's something that this is true. I've seen it, I've witnessed it, and there's statistics to back this up. Harvard Business Review, 80% of CEOs don't trust their marketing leaders.
Yeah.
And 75% of those marketing leaders don't believe that they are empowered to deliver the outcomes that they believe they were hired for. So we've got this system that's broken. And if you as that marketing manager, and usually when I say marketing manager, I'm talking about like a 28-year-old that may or may not have gone to school for marketing, that maybe has a couple of years experience. And they're in this situation where their direct, boss is the CEO, probably also founder of the company. And there's this enormous power differential. And you go in and you say, well, I think we should do this and it'll be great. And the CEO is like, I don't trust that. And they're gonna go to, if they're in a peer group, if it's Vistage or EO or wherever it is, somebody says, well, I've got this great SEO company. Okay, we're gonna do SEO and it's gonna be great. But nobody ever thinks, and so then the marketing manager goes and hires the SEO company. And they don't get the magical result. And then what they do, the first thing that they do is that then they go and replace the SEO company.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that happens is, marketing manager, I've given you multiple chances to make this work. You're gone. And that's a really stressful way to live, by the way, as that marketing manager in that situation. Yeah. knowing that you're not making the decisions, but you're still going to be held accountable for them.
Yeah, you're accountable for the CEO's decision.
Yeah. And it's a really tough, stressful place to be. And so, but nobody even asked the question, do we need SEO?
Yeah.
If we're going to spend money, is this where we need to spend it? Is this going to deliver the result that we're hoping for? Because a lot of people think that it's going to deliver leads. And in the 2020s, that's not generally what you're going to get from an investment in search engine optimization. So we're completely misaligned on, there's a huge difference between the result that we want and the tactic that we're paying for in order to achieve that. Yeah. And then we sit back and wonder why it doesn't work. And so there's this base problem that just needs to be fixed. Yeah. And I decided that it was my job to fix that problem.
There you go. I love it. That's a problem. That's a problem in the economy, that people, and you know, there's only 20 to 40% of people that are even open to things like training and learning, yes. and such in a corporate or business setting. And so it's not like everyone needs what you're doing, but there are, if you take the intersection of those that are open and yes. learning oriented, and typically right now are used to just bossing all their vendors around in the marketing functions, you've got a perfect vision for this. Yeah, I'm going to come in and help you approach this at the foundation and get you making the right decisions. Yeah, because at the end of the day,
you're never going to have this problem again.
Yeah. I'm going to add a secret. Before we end here. Well, I want to add it to after yours, and you're going to probably cover it. But I want you to, if you would, to end. I want to get a bonus part of this interview at the end where you give us very concise. You've given us some background on your career. What are the 2 or 3 most practical feet, fingers, type, call, real activities? What should a young person or someone that's older that's feeling stuck, what should they do to get their career moving forward and not feeling like you've described? And then second, if you could give us your top 3 to 5 super practical, do this to make your marketing profitable to finish off. Would you do that?
I would say for that sort of younger person, the best advice that I can give you is become an expert in something. It's not enough just to do the job, and if you want to create opportunities for yourself, what we all need, and this is something that I still need to do, being in my advanced age, but got to make it. If we're going to be useful, we've got to make ourselves useful, and we've got to continue to be useful, and we've got to invest in that. And so you've got to find something. If your ambition is to grow in whatever role you're in or whatever line of work that you're in, make yourself an expert in something. And when you are an expert, and especially if you're the only expert at the company about this specific thing, it's really great when the people above you realize that they don't just need somebody to be sitting in your seat, but they actually need you. Yeah. That's probably the best thing that you can do, that you can do for yourself.
Let me just add something to that I think, I love that advice. I think it's so important. There are young people, just through doing some adjunct professoring in previous years and occasionally, when you're really in college and you're really at this formative stage and you get out, there's this feeling that I need to pick what to do that in and need to be sure forever, but it's really not true. It's a mirage. What you want to do is take your best guess through some very thoughtful effort and pick something to be expert in, become specialized in, and what you'll find is that life is long And even if you go 5 or 10 years and never use that again, when you go to dinner with the two spouses, you're going to be interesting because you know something about something unexpected. If you end up being a specialist at 2 or 3 things in your career, bravo. It's not a danger. It's a wonderful thing. As long as it's sequential, that you can really try to get to the bottom of it.
And it's also something that you can do for yourself that can help you avoid the pitfalls that a lot of people fall into, like inertia, like imposter syndrome. And as somebody who still suffers from imposter syndrome every now and then, but remembering that you have something unique to offer is a great way to battle that and to overcome that.
Those are great thoughts. All right, give us your best few things about how to make marketing profitable. Let us have it.
All right, number one, and this is an easy one that is so self-explanatory, but people forget it. And I mentioned it earlier, but it's this idea that your marketing and your service is not for you, it's for your customer. And when we're doing marketing, we're not doing it to make ourselves feel important or to talk about ourselves. We're doing it as a means of building a bridge to somebody who we hope will ultimately pay us money. So get really, really deep about what it is that your customers actually want, what they need, what their problem is, what their pain, what they're afraid of going wrong. And if you don't know those things, and by the way, you probably don't, go and ask them. Get on the phone with people and make it clear, hey, this isn't a sales call. This isn't this is me trying to learn how to do my job better and how to serve my customers better. Mm-hmm. When you were looking for somebody to do what I do for you, what did you think that you were looking for? And what problem were you trying to solve? And who did you talk to besides me? And what are the things that I did that made you comfortable in that process? And what are the things that I did that, as the young people say, gave you the ick? Because I need to understand, and the same thing for the other people that you talk to. And how did you find them? And how did you validate them? And what are the things that we do for you that you find most valuable? Yeah. A 20-minute Zoom with somebody, and you record the thing, transcribe it, get 7 or 8 of them, line them up, and you're going to find, I guarantee it, that 2 things are true. Number one, you've learned at least one thing about your own business that you didn't know before. And number 2, that there are several common threads between what those people are saying.
What I was going to say is that, what's interesting is if you keep doing that, and it's a lot of work, and when you're young or you're stuck, you don't realize how much work things are. But things that matter are a lot of work. And understanding a prospective customer is a lot of work. And it's the whole point of business. It is the purpose that you work. So it's worth it. And if you go to those 7 or 8 conversations and you're doing this immersion, eventually, as you keep working, you'll get to 50. And by the way, it's not, there's statistical sampling formulas that I'm just bypassing here. But a rule of thumb is that around 50, somewhere between 50 to 200 sample people is a representative sample. And so going that direction one at a time gives you the depth and the uniqueness to each one, and you discover the commonalities. Where the mistake is you go to 50 in a research project, or a 200 or 2,000 in a research project looking for commonalities, and you discover none of the esoteric, individualistic specificity.
2 things on that. Great points, by the way. But 2 things on that. Number one, a lot of people confused when I say, "Hey, you should interview your customers." A lot of people say, "Oh, but we did a survey," and I'm like, "No, no, no, it's different. It's different."
Yes.
And so surveys are great when the answer that you need to your question is a number.
Yeah.
That 38% of people agree that price is important when you're making a decision. If that answers your question, then that's great. But if the question is, what should our price be?
Yeah.
A survey is a really terrible way to figure that out.
Terrible.
But I can definitely figure it out by actually talking to people and getting that insight. There's a big difference between quantitative research and qualitative. And what I typically like to do, and what I've learned to do over the years, is say, hey, I'm going to do my qualitative research first. And if I get 10 people, 12 people, 7 people that are telling me something and I want to test to see, so now I know that I've got an idea based on what this small group of people told me. Well, now if I want to, I can take that to a larger group. And guess what? The answer that I want is a number. How many people agree with this idea? And so I can always validate with quantitative research at the end. And the first thing that I do legitimately when I go to when I start working with a company and there's a young marketing manager at that company that's trying to learn their role, and that is the first job that I give them, is saying, guess what you're doing. You're going to become the expert on our customer. Yeah. And I'm going to show you how to do that. And at multiple companies that we've done this with, or that I've done this with, there really isn't a we anymore. But multiple companies have said, oh no, we're actually building this into our process from now on so that we don't lose the pulse of this. So that's my number one tip is actually talk to your
continuous
customers.
I call it bold immersion. I love it. Give us one more before we got to finish, and I got to let you go. What's your second profitable secret for marketing?
Okay. We choose the wrong stuff to do, and we don't spend money on things that we need to spend it on. The example of the search engine optimization, right? I spent money on search engine optimization. What I wanted were leads. That wasn't a good idea. And so, but truly, if I want to, what search engine optimization is a great solution for is awareness. And so if my problem is awareness, then maybe investing in search engine optimization is a good idea. So how do I know the good ideas from the bad ideas? There's actually a 4-step test that I teach people, and nothing is ever perfect, but this is going to keep you from stepping right into the hole in the ground. And so number one, does this tactic, let's say I'm talking about SEO, does this tactic fit into how my audience is going to find me? Does this fit into the habits of my target market? And as an example, well, everybody uses Google. No, that's actually not true. Yeah. We've got younger people who are increasingly using ChatGPT as a search engine, and they're going to continue using AI tools as search engines. We've got people who use YouTube as a search engine. When I really want to know something, I'm going to YouTube. I don't want to go and read articles on Google. And so there's definitely an option here where already search engine optimization fails the first test. Okay, so does it align with the habits of my customers? Number 2, does it align with the part of the sales process that I need to influence? And impacting awareness and impacting somebody signing up for something, or somebody buying something, or somebody becoming a lead are very different things. Yeah. Test 3. Does it align with my budget? Now, if I want to get awareness, There's a really great way to get awareness. I can buy an ad in the Super Bowl. That is not a luxury. I certainly can.
Or you can spend that equivalent money on Google Ads or something, right?
Or a whole lot of things. But I can.
Yeah.
But yes, anyone can dream. But look, realistically, there are a whole lot of us that can't afford to do that. Yeah. So if that's not in the cards, we've got to say no. If we can't do it and do it right, based on our budget, then it's a no. And the final thing is, does it align with my business goals?
Yeah.
And if I'm a no on any one of those things, and you'll see a lot of times where something will come up and it's like, oh my God, we've got this deadline. We have to tell them by Friday if we're going to do this sponsorship for yada, yada, yada. And people will go okay, well, we got to get this. Well, hold on. Does this even align with what we're trying to accomplish as a business right now? What were our business goals for the year? And does this help us accomplish that? Because if it doesn't, then we say no. And so simple 4-step test, you got to get 4 out of 4. And that's how you decide what you're going to buy.
Beautiful. Hey, let me ask you, first of all, let me thank you for coming on. Let me thank you for participating in this and revealing your secrets. And I'm so grateful. Really enjoy getting to know you. It's been really fun to hear your story. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed being here, and this has been fun.
Yeah. And then just finally, if someone wants to get a hold of you, is Erik Wolf live on LinkedIn the best way to get a hold of you, or how would you like them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's LinkedIn/in/Erik Wolf, ErikWolf, or you can reach me on my website, EWOLF.live.
Excellent. Thank you, Erik Wolf, the marketing whisperer.
That's right. We've done the whispering and we're good now. So thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining us to get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. You've heard a little bit about the power of bold encounters and leadership. Watch on. Go to full episodes with the iconic expert interviews at markspencercook.com/podcast. And please subscribe. My site takes you directly to YouTube video and podcast versions. Please make comments. Share this with your friends. Also, reach out to us to just brainstorm your priorities, challenges, events, or how bold encounters might help. Visit windfallpartners.com. Click the Let's Talk button without obligation and reach out. I look forward to speaking. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's lead with bold encounters today.